Hey folks, I'm Allison. Welcome to my booktube channel. I've put together a TBR for May and June that I'm very excited about, so let's go ahead and jump in. The first book on my list is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I got this book for $5 at a little charity book pop-up, and I'm excited to read it because some of my friends have read it recently and really recommended it. It is about Oliver Cromwell and his sort of machinations in the Tudor court, but apparently is done in a way that makes him a very fully realized character as opposed to just a sort of like creepy villain in the shadows as he is often presented in novels about this era. And it got really good reviews. I mean, you know, it won the Man Booker Prize, so you know, hopefully it will turn out to be very well written and all of that. But I also really like the Tudor era. I think it's a fun time in history to read about. Just like the court drama level was really high. And this seems like, you know, a unique take that I haven't ever read a book from this angle before. So I'm really excited about it. The next book that I also got at that same $5 charity pop-up is The Unlikely Adventures of the Shergill Sisters by Balli, Kaur, Jaswal. I think I may have talked about this book in a previous TBR video. I think this was the one book maybe from my TBR for March and April that I didn't make it to. I try to like balance the literary fiction and sort of sci-fi fantasy that I read. And I think I ended up reading a couple of other literary fiction books and like sort of jumping them up the list in front of this one. And so this is back on my list for May and June. This is by the woman who wrote erotic stories for Punjabi widows. And that's really why I picked it up, because I had seen that book a bunch of times in bookstores and picked it up and carried it around with me, and then sort of eventually put it down and not bought it. And so when I saw the opportunity to read something by this author, you know, for sort of $5 at this charity sale, I thought, yes, that's the way I'm gonna do it. It's basically about the relationship between two sort of semi-estranged sisters as they have to go on like a big trip following their mother's death. And I like books about, you know, sibling relationships. I think they're often some of the most like fruitful in that like their relationships with their parents and their like sense of belonging in their community, like all of those things are like baked into sibling relationships. And I read last month I read a bunch of books also about sibling relationships. I read Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake and The Dutch House by Anne Patchett, and really enjoyed the sibling relationships in those books, so I'm excited about this one. The next book on my list is The Last Werewolf by Glen, Duncan. And this is a book that I got from somebody off the Facebook Marketplace. And I don't know a ton about this book, to be perfectly honest, but the New York Times book review blurb on the back of it was, "I can't help thinking that wry, world-weary Jake Marlowe would make a fabulous dinner companion, just not during a full moon." And I don't know, something about that really spoke to me. I wanted to add some fantasy to my TBR. I had a lot of lit fic already on my TBR of things that I want to read in the coming months. And so I was sort of looking for some fantasy to add to the list. And this seems like it's going to be really straight down the line werewolf fantasy and probably a romp. So I'm very excited to read this one. As you'll see, we're back to more lit fic. I sold some books actually to a used bookstore near my house and got store credit, and I used the store credit to buy this A Mercy by Toni Morrison. I don't know that much actually about what this book is about. I've read a ton of Toni Morrison and I absolutely love her, and so basically any time I see one of her books somewhere that I haven't read yet, you know, like not somewhere like Barnes & Noble, but you know, in a little library or in a, you know, used bookshop or that sort of thing, I will sort of always pick it up because I've never been let down by Toni Morrison, and I sort of don't expect to be. But also this has a very beautiful cover. I got a hardback version, which is like so beautiful. You know, it has this gorgeous like portrait of her on the back, and it felt very like special as just an item. And you know, since I was like sort of buying one book with my store credit, it was nice to buy one that felt sort of special. And yeah, okay. Oh yeah, okay. I do remember what this book is about. Okay. So this is a really interesting book because this is it's a book about the slave trade, but it is not set in America. Most of Toni Morrison's books are set in America. And this book is actually set in the 1680s. So it's about a Dutch trader who takes a slave, a young girl, as part of payment for a bad debt. And I guess sort of about their relationship, or I mean, relationships, you know, not probably the right way to put that, but about, you know, what happens to them. And also it talks about, I think, like, is much more focused on the impacts of slavery on like people still living in, or the impacts of slavery and colonization on people still living in Africa and people in Europe, relative as opposed to a lot of her books, which are focused on like America and the Americas. So actually that'll be really interesting. I mean, that's not the 1600s are not a period of history about which I feel like I know a ton, you know, late 1600s. So I'm really, really looking forward to learning. Every time I read something by Toni Morrison, I feel like I just like learn things in the way, like not in the way of, oh, that's a nice fact. Like obviously I think the books are very historically accurate and well researched, and they, you know, you really have the sense that she's setting them in a world that she has done a lot of investigation into, but you just learn in the way of like, you learn it in your gut, you know, about the like experience of the world. So yeah, anyways, I mean, obviously also I feel like most of her books are like they're just like hard, you know, on your heart, but beautiful. So anyways, this one's on my list, and I will let you guys know how much I cry reading it. Okay, the next book on my list is The Book Eaters by Sunyi. This is a book set in, I think, the English countryside about a sort of magical family of people who eat books, and they end up with a child who like maybe drinks blood or eats people or something. I'm not totally sure the specific mechanics of it, but basically it's a book, it's like very fairy tale vibes, right? Like sort of like English countryside, people living in a remote manner and eating books as snacks and having magic, in that lovely sort of like fairies and rolling hills kind of way. So I'm looking forward to spending some time in that vibe. But I think it also is about like family and sacrifice and, you know, hiding family secrets, and how far are you willing to go to protect the people you love, you know, maybe when they're a danger to people around them. And I think all of that is, you know, a fun sort of question for this fantasy book to be trying to answer. The last book on my TBR is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This is a book that I bought new from a local bookstore, and I've been wanting to read this book for a long time. I've seen a lot of people talking about it on the internet for a couple of years now, and I think it's about the daughter of Turkish immigrants who goes to Harvard and her sort of experiences, you know, with feeling like an outsider, and the relationships that she makes, and the sort of ways in which she is like vulnerable in this new, you know, as a sort of outsider in this community, or maybe even not an outsider because she's like a Harvard student, but as someone who feels like an outsider in the community in which they've sort of entered into. And I think it also, being set in Harvard, you know, has a sort of fun, dark academia vibe. And then I think they like go on a sort of European tour to, yeah, Budapest and the Hungarian countryside. So all of that has strong, like, dark academia, not fantasy, obviously, it's lit fic, but, you know, dark academia vibes. So I'm very excited about this one as well. Oh. So there you have it. There are the 6 books that I am going to try to read in May and June. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to hear more from me, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for spending some of your one wild and precious life with me watching this video. Goodbye.